You ever wonder how you ended up with your mom's eyes but your dad's smile? Or how you and your sibling can come from the same parents but be so wildly different? Well, today we're going to unlock one of the biggest secrets of how those traits get shuffled and passed down from one generation to the next. So let's dive right in. It's one thing to figure out the odds of a kid having brown eyes versus blue eyes. That's pretty straightforward. But what if you also want to know about, say, their hair, curly or straight? Do those two traits have anything to do with each other? Are they some kind of package deal, or are they totally separate? That's the puzzle we're tackling today. To get to the bottom of this, the science of genetics had to level up. It needed a new tool, a way to see the bigger picture, a way to track how different traits kind of dance with each other as they get passed down. And this, folks, is where the story gets really good. So the big upgrade here is moving from what we call a monohybrid cross to a dihybrid cross. A monohybrid cross, simple. It tracks just one thing, like plant height. But a dihybrid cross, and this is our focus today, is like playing genetic chess in multiple dimensions. We're tracking two different traits at the exact same time. Think seed shape and seed color. All right, let's go back in time and meet the guy who cracked this code, Gregor Mendel. His experiments, conducted in a quiet monastery garden, are legendary. In his work with dihybrid crosses, it was an absolute stroke of genius that literally laid the foundation for all of modern genetics. So Mendel decided to follow two traits in his pea plants, the shape of the seed and its color. And here's the breakdown. For shape, round is dominant. For color, yellow is dominant. Just think of a dominant allele as the loudest person in the room. If they're there, you're going to hear them. You only need one copy of that allele to see the trait. And his setup was brilliant. First, he started with two true breeding plants. Now, all true breeding means is that they're purebreds. They always produce offspring that look just like them. So he crossed a true breeding round yellow pea plant with a true breeding wrinkled green one. And what happened? That first generation, the F1s, were all identical. Every single one was a hybrid, and they all looked round and yellow. But then came the masterstroke. He crossed these hybrid F1 plants with each other. And this, right here, is the million-dollar question. What would that second generation look like? Would the round and yellow traits be stuck together forever? Would wrinkled and green always be a package deal? Or could nature mix things up and create totally new combinations? You can just imagine the anticipation. To solve this, Mendel needed a map. He needed a way to chart every single possible combination that could pop out of that F1 cross. And that's where this amazing tool, the Punnett square, comes in. For a dihybrid cross, though, it's not a small 4-box grid. It's a much bigger, more intricate map of what's possible. Okay, first things first. Before we can build the map, we need to figure out all the possible ingredients each parent can contribute. We need to find all the possible allele combos that can end up in their reproductive cells, or gametes. And from a parent with the RRYY genotype, you can see there are exactly 4 possible combinations they can pass on. Okay, wow, I know this looks like a lot. It's a big 16-box grid showing every single possible genetic outcome from that cross. We put the 4 possible gametes from one parent across the top and the 4 from the other parent down the side. I get it, it looks like total chaos, but I promise you, hidden inside all this mess is a pattern that is breathtakingly simple. And this is where Mendel's genius just goes off the charts. He didn't just see a jumble of 16 different letter combinations. When he actually planted these seeds and watched them grow, he saw a hidden order, a mathematical elegance in the chaos that would completely change how we view the living world. So he rolled up his sleeves and he started counting. He looked at the phenotypes, which is just a fancy word for what the pea actually looked like. How many were round and yellow? How many were round and green? Wrinkled and yellow, wrinkled and green. And what he found was about to rewrite the rules of biology. He found this, a ratio, 9 to 3 to 3 to 1. And it wasn't a fluke. He did the experiment again and again, and this exact predictable pattern showed up every single time. This was not a coincidence. This was a fundamental law of nature, whispering its secrets. So, what does this magic ratio actually mean? This chart breaks it down perfectly. Out of every 16 offspring, on average, 9 of them showed both dominant traits. 3 showed one dominant and one recessive trait. Another 3 showed the other combination of dominant and recessive, and only one, just one out of 16, showed both recessive traits. This was a game changer. It proved traits weren't linked. They could be mixed and matched in new, predictable ways. Now, finding a consistent pattern is an amazing discovery, but the real question, the thing that separates a good scientist from a truly great one, is asking why. Why does this specific 9 to 3 to 3 to 1 pattern pop up over and over again? Well, the answer is a simple yet incredibly profound law of nature. It's called the law of independent assortment. And honestly, it is beautiful in its simplicity. All it means is that the gene for seed shape gets passed on with absolutely zero influence from the gene for seed color. They are independent events. Think of it like shuffling a deck of cards. The odds of drawing an ace has no effect on the odds of that card also being a heart. They're totally separate chances. It's the exact same idea with these genes. And here it is in Mendel's own more formal language, what he called unit factors. Yep, that's just what we call alleles or genes today. He figured out, without ever seeing DNA, that these things are sorted and distributed into gametes completely independently of each other. Amazing. Okay, now get ready for my favorite part, a mind-blowing shortcut. Because once you really get this law, you unlock a much more elegant and powerful way to predict genetic outcomes. We're about to trade in that clunky 16-box grid for this simple, beautiful power of probability math. The secret is to stop looking at this as one giant, complicated problem. Independent assortment gives us permission to just chop it up into two smaller, way more manageable problems. One cross just for shape and a totally separate cross for color. And we can combine the results using something called the product rule. It's super simple. The chance of two independent things happening at the same time is just their individual chances multiplied together. It's the and rule. For instance, what's the probability of flipping a coin and getting heads and rolling a 6 on a die? It's just the probability of heads times the probability of a 6. And here is that beautiful math in action. Let's look at the table. We know from simpler crosses that the chance of getting a dominant trait is 3/4 and a recessive trait is 1/4. So, what's the probability of a pea being round and yellow? It's 3/4 times 3/4, which is 9/16. How about round and green? That's 3/4 times 1/4, which is 3/16, and so on down the line. Look at that! We just rebuilt the entire 9-3-3-1 ratio with simple multiplication. No big grid needed. How cool is that? And this really is the beauty of science. It's not just about getting the right answer. It's about understanding the deep underlying principles. The Punnett square shows you what happens, but the law of independent assortment explains why it happens, and it gives us a faster, more powerful way to see the future. But that leaves us with one last really interesting question. Mendel's law works perfectly when genes are on different chromosomes. But what if they're not? What happens if the gene for shape and the gene for color are physically located right next to each other on the same piece of DNA? Do they still go their separate ways, or are they linked together? Well, that's a story for another day.